Hi, I'm Mark Hutchinson with Arch Audio Recording Studios here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and welcome to our podcast. We talk about everything that has to do with music. If you're an artist, wanting to know how to release your music. If you're a producer, wanting to know how to do it better. If you're a writer, wanting to know how to write a hit song. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today with multi-award-winning songwriter, producer, and artist, Chris Wallace.
Hello.
Chris was here a few weeks ago, and we're glad to have him back again. Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm great. Back making some more music here at Arch.
Well, last time that we were here, you just had this little plaque, having the #1 song in the world with a K-pop band. So I'd say you've been staying busy.
Yeah, it's a sickness, honestly.
All right.
I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, and my wife is like, I'm humming to myself in a phone, my phone, a voice note, and she's like, she's used to it at this point, but
Yeah.
it's the blessing and the curse of my life. So it's just, you never know when an idea is going to hit you. So.
Well, I've got news for you guys out there that are viewing the podcast. Chris has been working on some more stuff here in the studio. I wish I could tell you something about it, but he'll kill me if I do. But such good songs coming from your brain. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today. We have a lot of songwriters here in Chattanooga and all around the world, of course, and how to write a hit song. I mean, is there a formula to it? Is there secrets to it? What's the trade secrets? And, you've had, you've got over 3 billion streams from songs that you've written and produced. So I'd say you're kind of the right guy to ask that question to.
I guess, yeah. I attribute a lot of, I think, my songwriting. It's, I've always had a version of ADD. I mean, it's never been diagnosed, but anytime I'm listening to a song, I'm like, I always gravitate, ever since I can remember, to the most repetitive part. So, when you hear choruses with 2 words, like, now I'm free falling, like, that's the magic. Like, how do you get the catchiest thing in the shortest amount of time? But I mean, you've heard the term, don't bore us, get to the chorus. And I think when I'm listening to songs, when I'm making songs, I try to make sure that's in there. And sooner than later. But it's, I don't think there's a real formula to it, but I gravitate towards some general ideas and general principles especially when I'm stuck. Sometimes, there's songs that defy those formulas, but if you're making something, it's like, okay, it's been 30 seconds and we're not to the chorus yet, or it's been a minute and a half and we're not even to the hooky part yet. It's like, all right, you might want to consolidate it a little bit and get the chorus happening a little faster in the song. But there's patterns in everything that we do. What is it, the Fibonacci sequence or whatever it is? Everything in our life is ones and zeros and follows this certain sequence, and it's no different with music. It's with a tension, you need a release. With a high, you need a low. So, I love to make quiet moments before a big moment. Things like that, I think, I really gravitate towards when I'm making songs. So, same thing with, say you have a verse in a song that's really busy, da 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 da, and then the chorus is like la la. You add that juxtaposition a lot of times, and there's little patterns that you kind of pick up over time and put in your tool belt. And I love to do things like that. Things like song structures, or verse structure, even going back to poetry or whatever, just A, B, A, things like that.
Tell us about that.
Those are some of the formulas. A, B, A would be like, you have a melody line that is A, and then you have a melody line that repeats that, and then you have a new melody line that is different than the A, and then you repeat the initial melody line again.
So you're coming back to the A.
Yeah, so it's a pattern. So it's, trying to create those little patterns and hooky things in your songs. It just makes them more memorable. And it's not something you have to do every time, but it's just little tools and tricks you could kind of rely on to, be like, hold on, why isn't this part good? And then maybe you go back to looking at kind of the math of it and being like, oh, okay, so every line is like a new melody I have to give someone to digest. And sometimes that works, but a lot of times it doesn't. You need that kind of pattern to make people be like, it's almost like when you've watched a movie or a TV show and it's like, a few seconds before you know what they're about to say happens, or you know, like, oh, that guy was the killer or whatever in this show. It's a similar feeling, I think, in music, because you're like, you know the pattern. You expect that pattern to kind of come back. And, doing things like that in music is it really helps the songs, just sound more like professional and finished and, and just sound better to the listener.
How do you know when you've written a hit versus... every song that I write, I think, oh, this is great. Not really, but I've written hundreds of crap songs, right? Yeah. But
we all have.
How do what's your viewpoint there? How do you know that this song is more special than the last?
Well, I guess I'll go back to the pattern idea of, how do you know what light is without dark?
Yeah.
Well,
that's deep, Chris.
Well, no, I mean, sometimes you just have to suck through it, or sometimes you have to fail forward and just write those 9 songs to get the one song that's great, and if you write 1 in 10 songs that's actually a good song that someone wants to cut, like, those are actually good odds for a songwriter if you think about it. So it's like, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to, and honestly, that goes towards anything in life, really. Because we only have so much time on this earth, so why not just keep trying?
Right.
Like, if you really love something, just figure it out. There's so many songwriters and so many creatives that are just like on the verge of quitting, and then they have that one break, and you hear all these stories all the time, and it's like all they did was persevere.
Yeah.
And that's the music game. It's like, fail, learn from it. Fail, learn from it. And, and even when your peers tell you it's not good, like, you gotta just keep pushing through, like, if it's your real passion. So
okay, well, let me switch gears just a little bit. I know you've written. I mean, what you're working on now with your own album, you've written pretty much all by yourself, right? Mm-hmm. But you've written a lot of hits with co-writers. What do you find which is easier? Which has been more successful for you? What's the pros and cons to both?
I mean, I would say most people collaborating is just the way to go, because, they're going to they've lived a different life and had different experiences, and they listened to a different album this week than you did. So it's like, you're going to get different ideas and different tastes, and, it's collaborating is just so much fun, but there's certain songs and certain things that I do, especially lately with my artist stuff, that there's just certain songs I want to sit and write alone because it's so personal, or it's, and sometimes it's I guess it's kind of like what I said earlier, like a juxtaposition. It's like I've worked with people for years and years, just nonstop. Like, everything I do is co-written, that now I'm like, actually, I feel like doing the opposite right now, because it's, it's something I could do, and even with production and mixing and all that stuff, I'm just like, for these songs, this batch of songs, I just want to do them all myself right now. And it just, that's what my gut tells me to do. And it feels good, and I'm getting out what I want to say, and it sounds like I want it to sound like. And, I'm sure I'm going to reach another road at some point in making my album where I'm like, I think I need to co-write. I think I need some new ideas, some new energy and things like that. But, my first big song that I got my first record deal with, all that stuff as an artist, it was 100% me, And funny enough, I actually ended up giving a dear friend of mine, Andrew, convinced me to finish the song. I had this song sitting there and I played it for him, and I was like, oh, what do you think of this? He's like, it's really good. And I was like, hey, what should I do with it though? It's like so pop and so different than anything I've ever done. He's like, you have to finish it. And he would call me just randomly. He'd be like, dude, did you finish that song yet? Did you? He pushed me so hard at that time, and it was exactly what I needed.
Yeah. And
I didn't even realize it at the time. I gave him 25% of the song for that.
Wow.
I wrote the song myself, but I gave him a piece of that song because it meant so much to me that he basically became the reason that all this stuff opened up for me.
Wow.
And that self-belief, him believing in me, kind of turned into me believing in myself.
Yeah.
I looked in the mirror and I'd repeat words he would say, and I'd be like, you got to keep going, So it's, in hindsight, it's there's so many little marks in my career and life where I doubted it, and I had the right person around me just saying, no, just keep going.
Right.
Keep going. You're just going off the road a little bit. You gotta get back on track. So it's, having the co-writers and having the people around you to to help you with that part of it. Like that's the part most creators don't talk about, is the psychological part about, I think we all kind of have it in us to be creative. It's just to stay creative.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like we all started as kids drawing and coloring and, you know, making up, singing random songs to ourselves, and our parents, you know, tell us to shut up enough times. And then you actually do shut up, you know? It's funny. My mom tells me a story about how she used to sing all the time, and she had, you know, several siblings, and she would sing all the time, la la la, you know, probably be in the back seat singing, and her you know, brothers and sisters would just be like, shut up, you know, just stop it. And she said eventually, she's like, I just stopped singing eventually.
Wow.
You know, and that's kind of why I said that, because at some point, you know, you just, you know, life kind of takes over,
Yeah.
and you stop being creative.
Well,
So I do, you know, I do think that having peers around you, finding peers and finding like a champion friend, there's a lot of value in that as well.
Absolutely.
Just be like, yo, like, let me hear what songs you're working on.
Yeah.
You know, and getting advice and just, you know, just keep on trying.
Well, you brought up the 25%. So that brings me to another question. You know, you've got publishers out there. You're with a publisher.
Yeah.
So how does an artist go about getting songs to a publisher? I mean, I've heard of pluggers. I've never used one. But what would you suggest to the folks watching this podcast? What advice would you have to get their songs out there?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously no one way, but if I was going to do it right now, if I was, you know, completely had nothing going on, and wanted a publishing deal and someone to help me pitch my songs to artists and film and TV and stuff like that, I mean, I would just probably stalk people online who
Wow.
are doing what I do.
Yeah.
And reach out to them, or, you know, end up in their comment section trying to get advice from other peers. And, you know, there is a community aspect about what we do. So it's like finding other people, even trying to get a publishing deal alongside of you and brainstorming with them, you know, like, hey, did you get one yet?
Yeah.
You know, like if that's your goal, then like, you know, just ask all the people and creatives who are already doing it, you know, and people like me, I mean, end up in my comment section and be like, hey, how'd you get your publishing deal? And I'll be like, send me some songs. I want to hear them, you know,
Yeah.
because if we all have it in us to do something great. And I truly think all of, you know, if you keep hitting your head or hitting the nail on this music thing, like eventually something just breaks loose. And that's happened for me time and time again. As soon as like I thought it was over, it'll be just one random K-pop thing happens, or one, you know, you just keep going and keep creating, and you know. So, but how I would recommend doing it is like finding the publishers, finding the A&R people that work at the publishing companies, and literally sending them things or tagging them and stuff, and you know, just trying to reach out and know about it. Like, because if they know about you and you release the right thing with the right artist, then it's like they're gonna, you know, ultimately you want them to come find you.
But what if they tell you no?
It's good. It's good. No is good. It just means you got to keep going.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the trick, I think, to a lot of the music game is like, you want to do something, you want to make your own fire. You want to create your own little fire. And even if it's small, you know, add some kindling, get some more wood, build a little fire, make it a little warmer, a little warmer. And it turns out the music industry is cold. They just want to get warm. So you build a fire, they're eventually going to find you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you get your own momentum locally. You find a local artist who you just love and you think there's something special, and you write with them, you know, or, you know, try to get connected with whoever you can and build your own small thing from nothing, you know, because every artist you've ever known started somewhere. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you're a songwriter, if you're a producer, like find your cool artists locally and just build with them. You know, you might build their whole career and they could be the next Drake, or they could be the next whatever, you know, because all the people who are hot now one day will not be.
Right.
You know, fast forward 10 years and it's like the whole chart's going to look different. So, you know, be thinking forward like that, I think would be the move, because it's like, you know, the previous generation just becomes all the heads of the next generation.
Yeah.
So I would focus on that type of stuff.
So, you know, we talked about on the last podcast, if you're an artist using TikTok and social media to your advantage, would you suggest to a writer that they use, that they if they're not a good singer, they got to get somebody to sing it. Got to do a demo of it, right?
Yeah.
And then put that on TikTok to see what kind of reaction they get, or
Well, I guess there's different routes, because it's like if you're a songwriter, and you're just trying to, and say you just write lyrics or something, it's like, it's probably good to collab with someone who could sing your demos. You know what I mean? Collab with someone who could sing would be, if you just produce, or say you just produce and can write some song lyrics or sing some melodies, you know, you need someone to help you sing those demos. Like the days of hiring a demo singer, you know, outside of like Nashville and things like that, they're kind of like, it's not really the thing anymore, you know, because everyone kind of has auto-tune and everything anyways, and you could get a demo across, you know?
So would you, I mean, suggest that, you know, you send a song of you and a guitar, you know, to the publisher, or do a full demo with, you know, produced out to a certain level?
I mean, when I send songs to my publisher, it's like some days we write, it's a piano and a vocal. You know, some days it's a guitar and a vocal. Some days it's super stripped, or some days, you know, because a lot of times you don't want to completely bake the cake or whatever before you give it to them. You don't want to be like, and here's the dish, now eat it, you know. But like, because, you know, the publisher might hear it and get a whole different vision. Like, oh, actually, this could end up with this, you know, completely different genre artist than you were thinking initially. And so, you know, some songs, if you overproduce them for the demo, you end up kind of pigeonholing yourself into a certain genre. Like, say you made a dance record, you know, and it's fully baked dance song, but it's like, in reality, it's like you take all that music off and it was just a great piano ballad.
Yeah.
You know, like a piano vocal song actually was how it ends up getting put out and released. But if you never, you know, bounce the stems that way to send it around for publishers and labels and stuff to hear it that way, sometimes they might miss it. I did that with a song that I pitched for The Weeknd, maybe a few years ago for his album. And you know, we did a full production and had, you know, all the bells and whistles, and it sounded like a Weeknd song. You know, in my head, it was like, okay, this sounds like it's ready for him. And I remember I sent it to the publisher, and they're like, do you have like a stripped version of the song? And I was like, that's a good idea, actually. And then we stripped it, and then it's like, oh, and then it wasn't The Weeknd. It wasn't even pitched for The Weeknd anymore. It was pitched for other pop artists, you know. So it's, you know, if you overbake it, you know, you might be stuck with what you got. So
what about melodic hooks? You know, if you've got a tune that has an intro or a turnaround or something that is a melodic hook, but you're just sitting there with the guitar, or a piano, how do you bake that into the demo you send to the publisher?
So are you talking about like...
Just like
say you just have a great melody?
Well, I'm saying you've got the lyrics and you've got the whole song, but part of the song is this great melodic hook.
Okay.
You know, that with just an acoustic guitar, you'd have to hum the melodic hook, right?
Some oohs and ahs.
Yeah. But, I mean, would you say in that case that you would...
Yeah, I mean, you could overlay it with other instruments,
Yeah.
you know, but just make it feel minimal is all. I guess all I was saying is like, don't do like full drums and cymbals, and, you know, don't go like crazy like it sounds like a finished record ready for the radio. You could show the people like the general idea, but if you just overdo it and add all the bass and the drum fills and the swooshes and the, you know, like crazy plugins and stuff, you know, like sometimes you just might overdo it, and it might actually, you know, the song might have been meant for a whole different thing, and the publishers and labels will, you know, they might not hear through that. That's what I'm saying. You can't expect someone to hear through that if you don't, you know, sometimes give them those options. So when I do demos for songs for people to cut, you know, I will a lot of times send like the stripped version and like a full production version if I have an idea.
Great advice.
Thanks.
I'd sit here and talk with you for hours about this because I've written songs for, you know, my whole life. And I'm sure I have more questions that our viewers have the same question. And it's cool to have somebody here that's been there, done that, and has some answers anyway. All the answers are different for all of us, right?
Yeah.
But I really appreciate having you here today.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate the viewers for taking a look at this podcast. And we hope that you'll subscribe and send this podcast around to your friends. Let them know that Arch Audio has great content. We have great guests like Chris Wallace and many future guests as well that you're going to love. So until next time, thank you for watching.